So now it's time to bring in the real obstacles of our game, the pipes. So far we've got the bird jumping up and down merrily, we've got the background moving to the left, and we've got our ground node which stops the bird falling through the floor. What we now need is these pipes to come in and appear at random heights to allow the bird to have something to avoid. Okay, so let's start by bringing in one of the pipes. So the pipe 1 comes down from above. So as a quick challenge then, can you add a pipe so it appears at the center of the screen and comes down roughly halfway, so say to the middle of the screen. Go for it. Did you manage it? It was perhaps a little more complicated than I implied, but let's see how I'm going to tackle the challenge. So we'll create a pipe texture, which is going to be an SK texture from an image named, and the image name is of course pipe1.png. Then we'll create our pipe 1, which is going to be an SK sprite node using a texture, and the texture is pipe texture. Then we'll set the pipe 1 position, and that's going to be equal to a CG point, and the X is going to be the middle. So that is self.frame.mid X, and Y is going to be self.frame.mid Y, but we want to add half of the height of the pipe. So that will shift up from being in the middle to being at the top of the screen. So that'll be pipe texture dot size dot height divided by 2. Okay, and then we just add that to the view controller or self. And let's take a look. Check and make sure that it's in the right position. And there we go. So that pipe is now where it should be. We have problems with the pipe overlapping with the bird, but we don't. So now let's bring in pipe 2. So the second challenge, especially if you didn't quite manage the first challenge, is to bring in pipe 2, which is the pipe coming up from the bottom, and make it just touch this one here so that they meet in the middle. Go for it. Okay, hope you managed that. So we're going to create another texture, so pipe 2 texture, which is going to be an XSK texture from an image named pipe2.png. Then we'll create pipe 2, which is going to be an SK sprite node from a texture, and the texture is of course pipe 2 texture. Then the tricky bit, we'll set the position. So the X coordinate is going to be the same as before, so self.frame.midX. The Y coordinate is going to be similar, so we'll start in the middle, self.frame.mid-Y, but this time we're going to subtract the pipe 2 texture height divided by 2. And that will just position it at the bottom half of the screen. and then we just add it in the usual way. All right, so let's just run that quickly, make sure that our pipes are in position, and then we need to start separating them by a fixed amount so that the bird has got a chance of getting through. Brilliant. So our pipes are now meeting. So let's try setting a gap height. And initially, let's take our bird texture. Or in fact, we can use the bird. Take the bird's size and height, and we'll multiply it by 4, see how that goes. So we'll give the bird a reasonable chance of getting through. Again, obviously making that number bigger or smaller makes the game easier or harder. And then we just need to subtract gap height divided by 2 from that one to move that one down by half of the gap height, and this one will move up by half of the gap height, which should mean that the bird is now flapping in between the two pipes. Let's take a look. And there we go. So that looks all right to me, maybe a bit narrow, but we'll see how it goes when we start playing the game. Okay. So now, of course, we need to start randomizing the position of the pipes. We can't have them all in the middle, or it'll be very easy. We need to move them up and down. And we'll do this by first deciding on a movement amount. So this is the total amount that both pipes are going to move up or down. And I want the maximum amount to be half of the screen. So I want the maximum possible movement to be a quarter of the screen up, and the maximum possible movement down to be a quarter of the screen down. So that means that the maximum total movement is half the screen. So to get that, I'm going to use arc for random. Now that generates a random number between 0 and 2 to the power of 32, which is a very big number. So if we want a random number between 0 and half the screen height, we use arc for random and then %, and then self.frame.height divided by 2. So this % is modulo, essentially, which means the remainder when the big number is divided by this smaller number. So that will give you a random number between 0 and the smaller number. I think we've got a slight issue that we have to convert this to a 32-bit integer to allow that to work. Okay, so now we've got the movement amount, which is somewhere between 0 and half the frame height. Then we don't want to move it upwards every time. Sometimes it's going to go up, sometimes it's going to go down. So let's create a variable called pipe offset, which is going to be the movement amount minus a quarter of the screen height. So if the movement amount is somewhere between 0 and half the screen's height, and we subtract a quarter of the screen height from that, then we're going to get a number between minus a quarter of the screen height and plus a quarter of the screen height, which is the type of offset that I want to have. So again, that's another one of those things it's worth just getting clear in your mind how it works. So pause the video, re-listen to the explanation if you need to. We need to do a quick conversion. So this is a uint32. Let's keep everything as CG floats. So let's convert that to a CG float because that's what it'll need to be later on. Okay, now we've got our pipe offset. We can finally add that on to the y coordinate of the position. And remember, we want to move both of them up or both of them down because we want to keep the gap in the middle the same. There we go. So now, with any luck, we should find that they've moved either up or down a little portion of the screen. So not too much, but not too little. Let's have a look. There we go. So now they've moved down. If we run it again, they should be in a slightly different position. There we go. Well, more or less back in the middle. Wonderful. Okay, so now we've got our random pipes. We next need to have them moving slowly from right to left, so moving across the screen. So let's add in an animation for that. So I'm going to have an animation for move pipes, which is going to be an SK action dot move by CG vector from a DX and a DY. The DY is 0 because we don't want it to move at all in the vertical direction. And what I'm actually going to do is place the pipe to the right of the screen and have it move 2 screens worth to the left. So the DX is going to be -2 times the screen width. So self.frame.width. And we'll experiment a bit with the time interval, but it does have to be relative to the screen size, because if someone's playing this on an iPad, we don't want them necessarily moving at the same speed as a small iPhone. So let's take the screen size again, dot width, and let's divide it by 100. So if the frame width is 600 pixels, it'll take 6 seconds to move across it. Sounds about right to me, but we can always play around with it later on. And I need to convert that to a time interval. Okay, then let's apply that to our pipes. So pipe 1, run move pipes, and similarly for pipe 2. Okay, let's have a look. So we should now find the pipes move reasonably slowly off to the left of the screen. There they go. Wonderful. Okay, so let's now change the initial position to being in the middle of the screen to being a screen width off the edge of the screen. So self.frame.width. And then same here. Self.frame.width. So now it should be invisible at the very start of the game, but quite soon it will come in from the right and then disappear off to the left. Let's have a look. There it comes. Wonderful. Great. Now we of course don't want just one pair of pipes coming through. We want to spawn pipes forever. So I'm going to do that using our good old friend, the timer. So I'm going to create a new timer in the didMoveToView method. And I'm actually not going to change it at all throughout the game. So I'm not going to give it a variable name. Just going to use an underscore to create our timer dot schedule timer, and we want the one with the target on. So I'm going to spawn a new pair of pipes every 3 seconds. See how that goes. And then the target is going to be the view controller or self, or that's actually the game scene in this case, but we can think of it much the same as the view controller. And the selector, we're going to use hash selector, and I'll use a method called makePipes which I'll just define first. There we go. So we can now access that make pipes method. User info, we don't need any. Repeats, definitely. Okay.